The orc woman's axe was still leaning against the stone hearth when Samuel Ashford woke, sunlight streaming through the cabin's single window, and he knew with absolute certainty that she had left it there on purpose. He had found her the night before, soaked to the bone and shivering beneath the eaves of his woodshed, the autumn storm hammering the mountainside with a fury that turned the forest track to mud. Samuel had wordlessly opened his door and stepped aside, and the orc woman had entered without speaking, water pooling on his floor. She was tall but not towering, perhaps 5.5 feet, with green skin that gleamed in the firelight and small tusks that curved just over her lower lip. Her hair hung in a thick braid down her back, black as pitch, and her clothes were the practical leather and wool of a hunter or ranger. They had spent the evening in near silence. Samuel had given her a blanket and hung her cloak to dry. He had made tea strong and bitter, and she had accepted it with a nod. The storm raged outside while they sat on opposite sides of the hearth, and when she finally spoke it was only to say her name, Faelith. Samuel. Nothing more had passed between them. When the storm broke before dawn, he had woken to find her gone and the axe standing where it now stood, its blade catching the morning light. It was beautiful work, orc-forged, the steel folded and patterned like water, the handle worn smooth by years of use. Not the sort of thing anyone forgot. Samuel rose and dressed slowly, his movements deliberate. He was a man of 32 years, lean and weathered from a life spent working wood in the high country. His hair was dark brown, his hands calloused and strong, his face unremarkable except for the steadiness of his gray eyes. He lived alone by choice, or perhaps by nature. Words had never come easily to him, and solitude suited his work. He made breakfast, porridge with honey, and ate it standing at his workbench while studying the axe. The craftsmanship was exceptional. The balance would be perfect. He could not imagine Faelith leaving such a tool behind by accident. When he had finished eating and cleaning his bowl, Samuel lifted the axe carefully and turned it in his hands. The weight was right. The edge was sharp enough to split a hair. He wrapped it in oiled cloth, tucked it under his arm, and set out down the mountain trail toward the trading post at Clearwater Creek. The walk took most of the morning. The storm had left the air clean and cold, and the aspens were turning gold on the hillsides. Samuel moved at an easy pace, his boots finding the path by memory. He knew every root and stone of this mountain. He had built his cabin here 8 years ago, choosing isolation over the noise and confusion of the valley settlements, and he had never regretted it. Clearwater Creek was hardly more than a crossroads. A dozen buildings clustered where the creek widened into a ford. There was a mill, a smithy, a general store that doubled as a post office, and a trading post where the orc clans from the northern forests came to barter furs and herbs for iron and salt. Samuel made his way to the trading post, a low building of chinked logs with racks of antlers nailed above the door. Inside, the air smelled of leather and smoke. An orc man stood behind the counter, old and broad-shouldered, his skin a deeper green than Faelith's, his tusks long and yellowed. Samuel knew him by sight. His name was Gorsak, and he had run the trading post for as long as anyone could remember. Gorsak looked up as Samuel entered, his dark eyes sharp. "Ashford, do not often see you down here outside of winter." Samuel unwrapped the axe and laid it on the counter. "Faelith Jarn. She left this at my cabin last night, came in out of the storm." Gorsak glanced at the axe, then back at Samuel, and something that might have been amusement flickered across his weathered face. He picked up the axe, turned it over, and set it down again. Did she? Figured she would want it back. I am sure she would." Gorsak leaned against the counter, crossing his arms. By clan law, though, an axe left in another's home cannot be returned all at once. Samuel frowned. What, old custom, keeps the peace? If someone leaves a tool or weapon in your house, you cannot just hand it back and be done with it. 3 visits are required. First visit, you show them the item so they know it is safe. Second visit, you maintain it, sharpen it if it is a blade, oil it if it is leather. Third visit, they are permitted to carry it home. It forces people who have quarreled to see each other 3 times, gives them a chance to work things out. We have not quarreled. We barely spoke. Gorsak's expression remained neutral, but his eyes were bright. Then I suppose the visits will be easy. Samuel looked at the axe, then at Gorsak, understanding dawning slowly. She left it on purpose. That would be my guess, yes. Why, that, Gorsak said mildly, is a question you will have to ask her. But if you want to return her axe, you will need to do it properly. First visit, you tell her you have it and it is safe. Bring the axe with you so she can see it. Second visit, you sharpen and care for it. Third visit, she takes it home, or does not, as the case may be. Samuel stared at the old orc, feeling a strange flutter of something he could not name. He was not a man given to flights of fancy, but the thought that Faelith Jarn had deliberately left her axe in his cabin, knowing it would require him to seek her out 3 times, struck him with the force of a hammer blow. "Where does she live?" he asked. "Northwood clan territory. Follow the creek upstream about 6 miles, then take the fork that leads into the pines. You will see their lodges. Ask for Faelith Jarn, daughter of Kurga. They will direct you." Samuel wrapped the axe again and nodded. "Thank you." "Take your time with it, Ashford," Gorsak said as Samuel turned to leave. 3 visits. Do it right. The walk to Northwood clan territory took the better part of an afternoon. Samuel followed the creek as it narrowed and tumbled over smooth stones, the water so clear he could see the trout flashing in the pools. The forest here was old growth, pines rising like columns into the sky, the ground beneath them soft with needles. The air smelled of resin and earth. He found the clan lodges where Gorsak had said they would be, a cluster of sturdy timber buildings built in a clearing beside a spring. Smoke rose from the chimneys, and he could hear voices, the clang of a hammer on metal, the laughter of children. Several orcs paused in their work to watch him approach, their expressions guarded but not hostile. A young orc man, perhaps 20, stepped forward. "Human, state your business." "Looking for Faelith Jarn, daughter of Kurga. I need to speak with her." The young man studied him, then nodded slowly. "Wait here." Samuel waited. The sun was lowering in the west, casting long shadows through the pines. He held the wrapped axe under one arm and kept his posture relaxed, non-threatening. A few minutes later, Faelith emerged from one of the lodges. She wore different clothes now, clean and dry, a tunic of undyed wool and leather trousers. Her braid hung over one shoulder and her green skin seemed to glow in the slanting light. When she saw Samuel, she stopped, and for a moment neither of them moved. Then she walked toward him, her expression carefully neutral. "Samuel Ashford, Faelith Jarn, you came all this way. You left your axe." She glanced at the wrapped bundle under his arm and the corner of her mouth twitched. "So I did. Gorsak says there is a law. 3 visits to return it. There is. First visit, I show you it is safe." Faelith looked at him for a long moment, and Samuel had the sense that she was weighing something, deciding. Then she nodded. "Let me see it." Samuel unwrapped the axe and held it out to her. Faelith took it gently, running her fingers over the blade, checking the edge, examining the handle. Her hands were strong and scarred, the hands of someone who had worked all her life. "You did not damage it," she said. "Why would I? You would be surprised." She handed the axe back. "It looks well. Thank you for keeping it safe. Second visit, I sharpen it." "Yes." When should I come back? Faelith studied him, her dark eyes unreadable. A week, give me a week. All right. She hesitated, then said, Why did you let me in? During the storm. Samuel considered the question. You needed shelter. Most humans would not have opened the door. I am not most humans. Something shifted in her expression, softening. No, I suppose you are not. They stood in the clearing as the evening deepened around them, the forest settling into twilight. Samuel could feel the weight of watching eyes, the clan members observing this strange meeting, but he did not look away from Faelith. I will see you in a week, he said finally. Yes. He turned and started back down the trail, the axe still wrapped under his arm. Behind him he heard Faelith's voice, quiet but clear. Samuel. He stopped and looked back. Thank you, she said. For coming. He nodded and continued walking, his heart beating strangely in his chest. The week passed slowly. Samuel worked in his shop, carving bowls and spoons, cutting and shaping the wood with the same patient precision he brought to everything. His cabin was filled with the smell of fresh shavings, and his hands moved with a rhythm born of long practice. But his mind kept drifting to Faelith, to the way she had looked at him in the clearing, to the deliberate act of leaving her axe behind. He was not a man accustomed to being sought out. His life was simple and solitary, and he had thought himself content with it. But now there was a new thread woven into the fabric of his days, and he found himself thinking about the second visit, about what he would say, about what it meant that she had chosen him. On the seventh day, he took the axe to his sharpening stone and worked the edge with careful strokes, bringing it to a razor keenness. He oiled the handle and polished the steel until it shone. When he was satisfied, he wrapped it again and set out for Northwood clan territory. The walk was familiar now. The forest was deeper into autumn, the gold of the aspens giving way to bare branches, the air colder. Samuel moved steadily, his breath misting in the morning chill. He reached the clearing as the sun climbed toward noon. This time, Faelith was waiting for him, standing near the spring with her arms crossed. She smiled when she saw him, a small, genuine smile that lit her face. You are punctual, she said I would be here in a week. So you did. She gestured toward a low bench near the spring. Sit. Let me see what you have done. Samuel unwrapped the axe and handed it to her. Faelith tested the edge with her thumb, held the axe up to the light, checked the balance. Her expression was serious, focused, and Samuel watched her work with a quiet appreciation. This is good work, she said finally. Better than good, you know your way around a blade. I work with sharp tools every day still, this is fine. She looked at him, her dark eyes warm. Thank you, it is part of the custom. Yes, but you did it well, that matters. They sat together on the bench, the axe resting between them. The clearing was quiet, the clan members going about their business, giving them space. Samuel could hear the murmur of the spring, the rustle of wind in the pines. Why did you leave it? He asked. Faelith was silent for a moment, her gaze on the axe. Because I wanted an excuse to see you again. You could have just asked. Could I? You are human. I am orc. There are not many places where that meeting would be welcomed. Samuel thought about that, about the truth of it. He had seen the suspicion in human settlements, the way people watched the orcs who came to trade, the muttered comments about savages and monsters. He had never shared those views, but he understood they were common. You are welcome at my cabin, he said. Any time. Faelith looked at him, and something vulnerable flickered across her face. You mean that? I do. She smiled again, wider this time, and Samuel felt that strange flutter in his chest once more. They talked for a long time, sitting by the spring. Faelith told him about her work as a ranger for the clan, patrolling the forest, managing the herds of deer and elk, keeping watch for poachers. Samuel talked about his carving, the way the wood spoke to him, the satisfaction of shaping something useful and beautiful from raw timber. It was easy talking to her, easier than talking to most people. Faelith listened when he spoke, and she spoke plainly in return, without artifice or games. The hours slipped by, and Samuel realized with some surprise that the sun was already lowering toward the treetops. "I should go," he said reluctantly. "Long walk back." Faelith stood with him. "One more visit." "Yes. 2 weeks this time. Will you come in 2 weeks?" "I will." She reached out and touched his hand, her fingers warm and rough. "I am glad you let me in during the storm, Samuel Ashford." "So am I." He walked back down the trail with the axe under his arm, his hand still tingling where she had touched it. The 2 weeks stretched longer than the first. Samuel found himself restless, pacing his cabin, staring out at the forest. He carved a new set of bowls, intricate and fine, and he thought about Faelith as he worked, about her smile, about the way she looked at him, like he was someone worth seeing. He was halfway through the 2nd week when trouble came to Clearwater Creek. Samuel had gone down to the trading post to buy salt and cornmeal, and he found the place in an uproar. A group of men stood outside the general store, their voices loud and angry. Samuel recognized a few of them, loggers from the valley settlements, rough men who made their living cutting timber. He caught fragments of the argument as he approached, something about land rights, about the northern forest, about orc claims. Gorsak was standing on the porch of the trading post, his arms crossed, his expression grim. Samuel walked over to him. "What is happening?" "Trouble," Gorsak said shortly. "Valley loggers are claiming the northern pine forest, say it is public land, open to anyone who wants to cut. The Northwood clan has a deed to that land, recorded and legal, but the loggers do not care." Samuel felt a cold knot form in his stomach. "They are planning to log the clan's forest, already started. Moved in yesterday with saws and axes. Faelith and her rangers tried to stop them, but the loggers brought guns, threatened to shoot anyone who interfered." The cold knot tightened. "Where are they now?" "The loggers are still in the forest, setting up camp. The clan has pulled back to figure out what to do. They could fight, but that would bring the militia down on them, and you know how that would end." Samuel did know. The frontier was still a place where violence between humans and orcs could spiral out of control quickly, and the law always sided with humans in the end. If the clan fought back, they would be labeled as aggressors, savages attacking innocent workers. It did not matter who was in the right. "What about the law?" Samuel asked. "If they have a deed, the nearest judge is 3 days' ride south, and he will not hear a case brought by orcs without a human sponsor. By the time anyone sorted it out, the forest would be stripped bare." Samuel stared at the ground, his mind racing. His livelihood depended on timber. He bought wood from the valley loggers, good straight pine and oak, and used it for his carving. If the loggers were given free rein in the northern forest, there would be plenty of cheap wood available. It would be good for his business. But the northern forest belonged to the Northwood clan, legally, morally, and Faelith was part of that clan. "I need to think," he said. Gorsak looked at him, and there was something weighing and measuring in his gaze. "Yes, I expect you do." Samuel bought his supplies and walked back up the mountain trail, his mind churning. The situation was clear enough. If he sided with the loggers, or even if he simply stayed silent, he would benefit. Cheap wood, no trouble, his quiet life undisturbed. But the Northwood clan would lose their land, their livelihood, their future. And Faelith would know that he had chosen his comfort over her people. If he sided with the clan, he would make enemies of the valley loggers, men who controlled most of the timber trade in the region. He might lose access to the wood he needed for his work. He might lose customers who did not want to do business with an orc lover. It could ruin him. but it was the right thing to do. Samuel reached his cabin as the sun set, and he stood in the doorway looking at the axe, still wrapped and resting on his workbench. He thought about the custom Gorsak had described, the law that forced estranged people to meet 3 times, to reconcile slowly. He thought about Faelith's smile, about her hand on his, about the way she had said she was glad he had let her in during the storm. He thought about what kind of man he wanted to be. The next morning, Samuel packed a bag and set out for the northern forest. The loggers' camp was easy to find, a raw scar of trampled ground and felled trees at the edge of the pine forest. Samuel counted 8 men, hard-faced and armed. They had set up tents and a cook fire, and the sound of saws echoed through the trees. Samuel walked into the camp with his hands visible and empty. One of the men, a big fellow with a red beard, stepped forward to meet him. "Help you? My name is Samuel Ashford. I am a woodcarver. I live up the mountain." "Know who you are. What do you want?" "I want you to leave this forest. It belongs to the Northwood clan. They have a legal deed." Red Beard laughed, and the other men joined in. "Legal deed? Orcs do not have legal deeds, friend. This is public land, and we have as much right to cut here as anyone." "You are wrong. Gorsak at the trading post has a copy of the deed. It is recorded with the territorial government. Gorsak is an orc. His word does not count for much." Samuel kept his voice steady. "Then let's bring it to the judge in the valley. Let him decide." By the time the judge got around to looking at it, we would be done here. "And I do not think you want to make trouble, Ashford. You buy wood from us. You need us." "I need wood," Samuel said. "I do not need stolen wood." Red Beard's expression darkened. "You calling us thieves?" "I am saying you are cutting on land that is not yours. That is theft." One of the other men stepped forward, his hand on the pistol at his belt. "Maybe you should leave, Carver, before you get hurt." Samuel looked at the man, at the pistol, at the circle of hostile faces. His heart was pounding, but he kept his voice calm. "I am not leaving. And I am not letting you cut this forest. If you want to keep going, you will have to go through me." Red Beard laughed again, but there was no humor in it. "You and what army?" "Me and the law. I will sponsor the clan's case with the judge. I will testify that you are logging on deeded land. And I will make sure everyone in the valley knows what you are doing." The laughter stopped. Red Beard stepped closer, his face inches from Samuel's. "You are making a mistake, Ashford, a big one. We could make your life very difficult." "You could, but I am still not leaving." They stared at each other for a long moment, and Samuel could feel the tension crackling in the air. Then a new voice spoke from the edge of the camp, clear and strong. "He is not alone." Samuel turned. Faelith stood at the tree line, her axe in her hand, and behind her were a dozen orc rangers, armed and ready. She walked forward until she was standing beside Samuel, her gaze locked on Red Beard. "This is Northwood clan land," she said. "We have a legal deed, recorded and witnessed. If you continue cutting, we will take you to the judge, and Samuel Ashford will sponsor our case. If you resist, we will defend our land. Your choice." Red Beard looked at Faelith, at the rangers, at Samuel. His hand twitched toward his pistol, but he did not draw it. The odds had changed. "This is not over," he said finally. "Yes," Faelith said. "It is. Leave now, or we will remove you by force and the law will back us up." The standoff held for another long moment, and then Red Beard spat on the ground and turned away. "Pack it up," he told his men. "We are leaving." It took an hour for the loggers to break camp and haul their equipment out of the forest. Samuel and Faelith stood watching, the orc rangers forming a silent line behind them. When the last of the men had disappeared down the trail, Faelith turned to Samuel. "You came." "I did." "You stood with us, against your own people. They were in the wrong." "Yes, but most humans would not have cared." Her voice was thick with emotion and her eyes were bright. "You risked everything. your livelihood, your safety." Samuel looked at her, at the fierce, beautiful woman standing beside him, and he felt something shift and settle inside him. It was not a risk, it was a choice. Faelith reached out and took his hand, lacing her fingers through his. "Thank you, Samuel Ashford. My clan owes you a debt. No debt." It was the right thing to do. They walked back toward the Northwood clan lodges together, hand in hand, and the rangers followed behind them. When they reached the clearing, the clan was waiting, and an older orc woman stepped forward. She was tall and broad-shouldered, her hair streaked with gray, her tusks long and proud. Samuel knew without being told that this was Kurga, Faelith's mother. Kurga looked at Samuel for a long time, her expression unreadable. Then she nodded slowly. "Samuel Ashford. You have stood with us when your own people would not. The Northwood clan does not forget such things. You are welcome here always as a friend and ally." "Thank you," Samuel said. Kurga turned to Faelith. "Daughter, it seems you chose well." Faelith flushed green, a deeper shade spreading across her cheeks, and Samuel felt his own face warm. The clan gathered that evening for a feast, a celebration of their victory over the loggers and a welcome for Samuel. There was roasted venison and fresh bread, root vegetables stewed with herbs, and a strong, bitter ale that made Samuel's head spin. He sat beside Faelith at the long table, and the clan members toasted him, their voices ringing in the cool night air. "To Samuel Ashford, friend of the Northwood clan. To standing for what is right, no matter the cost. To our ranger Faelith, who knows a good man when she sees one." Samuel endured the toasts with quiet grace, unused to being the center of attention. But when Faelith leaned over and whispered, "You are doing well," he smiled. "I do not usually have this many people around. Neither do I most of the time. I spend my days in the forest alone. We have that in common." She looked at him, and in the firelight her eyes were warm and deep. "We have more than that in common, I think." The feast stretched late into the night, and when it finally broke up, Faelith walked Samuel to the edge of the clearing. "Will you stay?" she asked. "We have a guest lodge. You do not need to walk back tonight." Samuel hesitated. "I do not want to impose." "You are not imposing. You are welcome." He followed her to a small lodge at the edge of the clearing, a single room with a hearth and a bed piled with furs. Faelith lit the fire, and the flames cast dancing shadows on the walls. "I should let you rest," she said, but she did not move toward the door. "Faelith." "Yes, I am glad you left your axe," she smiled, and it was the most beautiful thing Samuel had ever seen. "So am I." She stepped closer, and Samuel felt his breath catch. They were inches apart, and he could feel the heat of her, the strength of her. Slowly, carefully, he reached up and touched her face, his rough fingers gentle on her green skin. "I do not want to presume," he began, but Faelith cut him off. "You are not presuming." She kissed him, and it was like the world tilted on its axis. Samuel wrapped his arms around her, pulling her close, and Faelith pressed against him, her hands tangling in his hair. They stumbled toward the bed, still kissing, and Samuel felt a rush of emotion so powerful it threatened to overwhelm him. They made love slowly, learning each other, mapping the planes and curves of unfamiliar bodies. Faelith was strong and warm and sure, and Samuel was careful and deliberate, treating her like something precious. Afterward they lay tangled together in the furs, Faelith's head on Samuel's chest, his arms around her. "This is real," she said quietly. "Is this real?" "It is real. I never thought I would find someone like you, someone who saw me, not just an orc. I see you, Faelith, all of you, and I like what I see." She lifted her head and looked at him, her eyes shining. "I am falling for you, Samuel Ashford." "I already fell," he said. "I think I fell the moment you walked into my cabin." She kissed him again, slow and sweet, and they lay together as the fire burned down to embers. Samuel stayed at the Northwood clan lodges for 3 days, and in that time he came to know Faelith's people. They were hard-working and proud, protective of their own but generous to those who earned their trust. Kurga taught him how to tan leather using orc methods, rubbing the hide with a mixture of brains and fat until it was soft and supple. A young ranger named Barak showed him the trails through the northern forest, pointing out the best places to find wild mushrooms and medicinal herbs. An elderly orc named Durog, the clan storyteller, shared tales of the old days when orcs and humans had been allies against common enemies, before suspicion and fear had driven them apart. And Faelith was always there, at his side, her hand in his. They walked the forest together, talking for hours, sharing stories of their lives. Samuel told her about growing up in a valley settlement, the son of a farmer, and how he had discovered his love of carving when he was 12, and his father gave him a knife and a piece of ash wood. Faelith told him about losing her father when she was young, killed by human hunters who mistook him for a raider, and how she had vowed to protect her clan so no one else would suffer the same fate. "I carry a lot of anger," she admitted as they sat by the spring on the second day. "Anger at the humans who killed my father. Anger at the ones who call us monsters. Sometimes it feels like it is eating me alive." "Anger is natural," Samuel said, "but it does not have to define you. How do you do it? You are so calm, so steady. Do you never get angry?" "I get angry. I just do not let it control me. My father used to say that anger is like a fire. It can warm you or it can burn you down. You choose." Faelith leaned against him, her head on his shoulder. "I am choosing to let it warm me, and you help. Good." On the third day, Samuel knew he needed to return to his cabin. He had work waiting, orders to fill, and he could not stay away indefinitely, but leaving felt like tearing himself in half. "I will come back," he promised Faelith as they stood at the edge of the clearing. "In a week. For the third visit. I will be waiting." He kissed her, long and lingering, and then he turned and started down the trail. Halfway back to his cabin, he realized he was still carrying Faelith's axe. The week dragged by. Samuel threw himself into his work, carving a set of chairs for a family in Clearwater Creek, but his mind kept drifting to Faelith. He thought about her laugh, about the way she looked at him, about the feel of her in his arms. He thought about the third visit, about what it meant. By clan law, the third visit was when the axe would be reclaimed. Faelith would come to his cabin, take the axe and carry it home. The custom would be fulfilled, but what if she did not take the axe? What if she left it with him, the way she had left it the first time? Samuel did not know what that would mean, but the possibility filled him with a fierce, wild hope. On the 6th day, Samuel went down to Clearwater Creek to deliver the chairs. The settlement was quiet, the loggers long gone, but there was a new tension in the air. People watched him as he passed, their expressions guarded. At the general store, the owner, a thin man named Phineas, refused to take his money for the supplies he bought. "On the house," Phineas said curtly. Samuel frowned. "Why?" "Because I respect what you did, standing up to those loggers." Most folks would have kept their heads down. "And the others," Phineas grimaced. "The others think you are a fool or worse, but do not worry about them. You did the right thing." Samuel left the store feeling both gratified and uneasy. He had known there would be consequences to his choice, but he had not anticipated how quickly the community would divide. Some saw him as a hero. Others saw him as a traitor to his own kind. Gorsak was sitting on the porch of the trading post, whittling a piece of wood. He looked up as Samuel approached. "Heard you spent a few days with the Northwood clan." "I did." "Heard you and Faelith Jarn are getting close." Samuel felt his face warm. "We are." Gorsak smiled, a slow, knowing smile. "Good, she is a fine woman, strong, loyal. You could do worse." "I could not do better." True enough. Gorsak set down his whittling. Fair warning, Ashford. There are people in the valley who are not happy about what happened with the loggers. Red Beard and his crew are spreading stories, saying you sided with the orcs because you are sleeping with one of them. It is going to get uglier before it gets better. Samuel felt a flash of anger, hot and sharp. Let them talk. I will, but you should know what you are walking into. Loving an orc is not going to make your life easier. I do not care. Gorsak studied him for a moment, then nodded. I believe you, just keep your eyes open. Samuel walked back up the mountain trail, his jaw tight. He had expected resistance, but hearing it laid out so bluntly stung. Still, it did not change anything. He loved Faelith. He was certain of that now, and he would face whatever came next as long as she was beside him. The 7th day arrived and Samuel woke before dawn. He had cleaned his cabin, swept the floor, laid a fire in the hearth. Faelith's axe stood in the place of honor, leaning against the stone mantel, polished and gleaming. He made breakfast and waited. The sun climbed higher and the morning stretched toward noon. Samuel sat at his workbench, his hands busy with a new carving, but his mind was on the trail outside, waiting for the sound of footsteps. She came in the early afternoon, walking out of the forest like a vision. She wore her ranger leathers, her braid hanging down her back, and her face was serious, intent. Samuel stood as she entered the clearing and they looked at each other across the distance. Faelith. Samuel. She walked up to the cabin and stopped at the threshold. Samuel stepped aside and she entered, her eyes going immediately to the axe. It is time, she said quietly. Yes. Faelith crossed to the hearth and lifted the axe, turning it in her hands. She tested the balance, ran her thumb along the edge and nodded. You have taken good care of it. It is a fine axe, it deserves care. She looked at him and there was something vulnerable in her eyes, something uncertain. By law, I am supposed to take it home now. The 3rd visit is complete, I know. But I do not want to. Samuel's heart skipped. What do you want? Faelith set the axe down and crossed to him, taking his hands in hers. I want to leave it here. I want to stay here with you if you will have me. If I will have you, Samuel laughed, breathless. Faelith, I have been hoping you would stay since the moment I saw you again. You have? Yes. I love you. I think I have loved you since the storm. Faelith's face lit up, joy and relief flooding her features. I love you too. I fell for you first, Samuel Ashford, and I fell hard. He pulled her into his arms and kissed her, and it felt like coming home. They stood together in the cabin, holding each other, and the world outside faded away. I need to talk to my clan, Faelith said when they finally broke apart. Tell my mother, make arrangements. Will they be all right with this, with you staying here? They will. You are a friend of the clan now, and my mother likes you. I like her too, Faelith smiled. Then it is settled. I will go back tomorrow, talk to Kurga, and return in a few days. For good. For good, Samuel repeated, and the words felt like a promise. Faelith stayed the night, and they talked late into the evening, making plans. She would bring her belongings, her tools, her weapons. Samuel would expand the cabin, add a 2nd room, maybe a covered porch. They would live together, work together, build a life in the mountains. What about your carving? Faelith asked. Will you be able to get wood after what happened with the loggers? I do not know, but I will figure it out. Maybe I will cut my own timber or find another source. It does not matter. I will make it work. We will make it work, Faelith corrected. Together. In the morning, Faelith left to return to the clan lodges, and Samuel stood in the doorway watching her go. The forest swallowed her up, and he was alone again, but it felt different now. Not lonely, just quiet, because he knew she was coming back. 5 days later, Faelith returned, leading a mule loaded with her possessions. Kurga and Barak came with her, along with 2 other clan members, to help carry everything. They spent the afternoon unloading, and Samuel was astonished at how much Faelith owned. Furs and blankets, tools and weapons, a small library of books, jars of preserved food, bundles of herbs and medicines. It was the accumulation of a lifetime, and she was bringing it all to his cabin. Their cabin, he corrected himself. Kurga pulled Samuel aside while Faelith was arranging her things inside. "You are taking on a great responsibility," she said. "My daughter is strong, but she has been hurt. She carries pain. You will need to be patient with her. I know. And you will need to protect her. There are those who will not accept this union, who will see her as a monster and you as a traitor. I know that too." Kurga looked at him, her dark eyes searching. "Do you truly love her with everything I am?" She nodded slowly. "Then you have my blessing. Take care of her, Samuel Ashford. And if you ever hurt her, I will come for you." Samuel met her gaze steadily. "I would expect nothing less." Kurga smiled, a fierce, proud smile, and clapped him on the shoulder hard enough to make him stagger. "Good, you will do." When the clan members left, Samuel and Faelith stood together in the clearing, watching them disappear into the forest. Then they turned and walked into the cabin, closing the door behind them. "This is home now," Faelith said, looking around. "Yes," she took his hand. "I am happy, Samuel. Happier than I have been in a long time. So am I." They fell into a routine over the following weeks. Samuel worked in his shop, carving and shaping wood, and Faelith ranged the forest, hunting and gathering, keeping the trails clear. In the evenings they cooked together, ate together, sat by the fire and talked. It was a simple life, but it was full, rich, and deeply satisfying. The trouble Samuel had been warned about materialized slowly. Some of his customers stopped ordering from him, unwilling to do business with a man living with an orc. Others came specifically because of it, drawn by curiosity or admiration. Samuel found new sources for timber, working with smaller, independent cutters who did not care about his personal life as long as he paid on time. One cold morning in late autumn, a group of men came up the trail to the cabin. Samuel was in his shop when he heard the voices, and he stepped outside to find 5 men standing in the clearing. Red Beard was among them, along with 2 of the loggers from the northern forest and 2 strangers Samuel did not recognize. "Ashford," Red Beard said, "we need to talk." Samuel crossed his arms. "I have nothing to say to you. Maybe you should listen anyway. We know you are living with an orc. That is your business. But we are hearing that the Northwood clan is expanding their territory, claiming more forest, pushing us out. Is that true?" "I do not know what you are talking about. Do not play dumb. You are thick with them now. You must know what they are planning." "I know they are protecting their land, the land they legally own. If you are having trouble finding trees to cut, maybe you should look somewhere that is not already claimed." Red Beard's face darkened. "You think you are clever, but you are making enemies, Ashford. People do not forget. Neither do I." One of the strangers stepped forward, a lean man with cold eyes. "Word of advice, Carver. Orcs are trouble, always have been. You keep siding with them, and one day you are going to wake up with a knife in your back. Theirs or ours does not matter." Samuel felt his temper flare, but he kept his voice level. "Get off my land. Or what? Or I will remove you." The man laughed. "You and what army?" The cabin door opened and Faelith stepped out, her axe in hand. She walked to Samuel's side, her expression cold and hard. "Him and me," she said. "Leave, now." The 5 men looked at her, at the axe at the set of her shoulders. Red Beard spat on the ground. "This is not over." "Yes," Samuel said, "it is. Go home." The men left, muttering threats and insults, and Samuel watched them go with a tight feeling in his chest. When they were out of sight, Faelith lowered the axe. "That was dangerous. I know. They could have attacked. I know." She looked at him, and there was fear in her eyes the first time he had seen it. "Samuel, I do not want you to get hurt because of me." "I am not going to get hurt. We are going to be fine." "You do not know that." He took her hands. "No, but I know I am not going to let anyone drive us apart. Not those men, not anyone." Faelith pulled him into a fierce embrace, and Samuel held her tightly, feeling the tension in her body. "We will get through this," he murmured. "Together." Winter came early that year, the snow falling thick and fast, blanketing the mountains in white. Samuel and Faelith settled into the rhythm of the cold months, spending long days inside by the fire, working on their crafts and planning for spring. Samuel carved a new set of tools, handles shaped to fit Faelith's larger hands, and Faelith sewed them both warm cloaks lined with rabbit fur. On the longest night of the year, Faelith came to Samuel with a serious expression. "I need to tell you something." "All right." "In the spring, my clan holds a bonding ceremony. It is like a marriage, but not quite the same. Two people stand before the clan and make vows, pledging to support and protect each other for the rest of their lives." Samuel's heart began to pound. "All right. I want to bond with you, Samuel. I want to stand before my clan and yours if you have family who will come and make those vows. I want everyone to know that you are mine and I am yours." Samuel reached out and took her hands, his throat tight with emotion. "I want that too." "You do?" "Yes, more than anything." Faelith's face lit up and she threw her arms around him, laughing. "Then in the spring we will bond." In the spring. They kissed, and Samuel felt a profound sense of rightness settle over him. This was what he wanted. This was what he had been waiting for, though he had not known it until Faelith walked into his life. Winter deepened, and Samuel began to make preparations. He sent a letter to his family in the valley, his mother and two younger sisters, telling them about Faelith and the bonding ceremony. He did not know if they would come, but he wanted to give them the chance. Faelith traveled to the Northwood clan lodges to speak with Kurga and begin the arrangements. When she returned, she was glowing. "My mother is thrilled. The whole clan is. They are already planning the feast. What do I need to do? You need to carve a gift. Something that represents you, your skills, your heart. You will give it to me during the ceremony." Samuel thought about that, about what he could make that would be worthy of Faelith. And then the idea came to him, clear and perfect. He would carve a second axe handle, a match to the one on Faelith's axe. A pair, a symbol of their matched life. He began work the next day, selecting a piece of ash wood, straight-grained and strong. He carved slowly, carefully, shaping the wood with the same patience he brought to everything. The handle took shape under his hands, smooth and balanced, and he inlaid it with a pattern of vines, delicate and intricate. When it was finished, he oiled it and polished it until it glowed. Faelith watched him work, but she did not ask what he was making. She trusted him, and that trust was a gift in itself. Spring came slowly, the snow melting away to reveal green grass and wildflowers. The forest came alive with birdsong, and the creek swelled with runoff. Samuel and Faelith spent the warming days preparing the cabin, cleaning and repairing, making it ready for the visitors who would come for the ceremony. A week before the bonding, Samuel's family arrived. His mother, Eliza, was a small, sturdy woman with gray hair and kind eyes. His sisters, Miriam and Clara, were both in their 20s, practical and curious. They came up the trail with a wagon full of supplies, and Samuel met them in the clearing. "Mother, Samuel." Eliza embraced him tightly, then stepped back to look at him. "You look well, happy." "I am." "And this is Faelith." Faelith stepped forward, and Samuel saw the nervousness in her eyes. "Yes, Faelith Jarn, this is my mother, Eliza Ashford, and my sisters, Miriam and Clara." Eliza studied Faelith for a long moment, and then she smiled. "You are taller than I expected." Faelith blinked. "I am," and prettier. Samuel said you were beautiful, but I did not believe him. Men always exaggerate, but he was right. Faelith flushed green, and Samuel saw some of the tension leave her shoulders. Thank you, Mrs. Ashford. Call me Eliza. We are going to be family. Miriam and Clara crowded forward, peppering Faelith with questions, and Samuel watched as his family and his love came together. It was awkward at first, the differences between them stark and undeniable, but his mother had always had a gift for putting people at ease, and by the time they sat down to dinner that night, the conversation flowed easily. Tell me, Eliza said to Faelith over the meal, how did you and Samuel meet? Faelith glanced at Samuel, her eyes twinkling. I left my axe at his house by accident. By accident? Miriam asked, laughing. It is a long story, Samuel said, but he was smiling. The week passed in a flurry of activity. The Northwood clan arrived 2 days before the ceremony, setting up a camp in the clearing near the cabin. Kurga and Barak came, along with Durog and 24 others, and the forest echoed with orc voices and laughter. Samuel's family mingled with the clan, and Samuel was struck by how natural it seemed. Humans and orcs working together, eating together, sharing stories by the fire. On the night before the bonding, Faelith and Samuel stood together at the edge of the clearing, looking out at the camp. Are you nervous? She asked. A little. Me too, he took her hand. It is going to be perfect. I hope so. The bonding ceremony took place at noon in a clearing near the spring. The clan had built an arch of pine boughs and wildflowers, and the ground was strewn with petals. Samuel stood beneath the arch, dressed in his best clothes, his heart pounding, and watched as Faelith walked toward him. She was breathtaking. She wore a dress of soft leather, dyed deep green and embroidered with silver thread, and her hair hung loose around her shoulders. Her tusks gleamed in the sunlight, and her eyes were bright with emotion. Kurga stood beside them, officiating. We are gathered to witness the bonding of Faelith Jarn, daughter of Kurga, and Samuel Ashford, son of Eliza. They come before us to pledge their lives to one another, to stand together in joy and sorrow, in strength and weakness, until the end of their days. Faelith took Samuel's hands, and he could feel her trembling. Samuel Ashford, she said, her voice steady and clear. I pledge to you my strength, my loyalty, my love. I will stand beside you, protect you, honor you for as long as I live. You are my heart, and I am yours. Samuel swallowed hard, his throat tight. Faelith Jarn, I pledge to you my loyalty, my support, my love. I will stand beside you, protect you, honor you for as long as I live. You are my heart, and I am yours. Kurga nodded. The vows are made. Now the gifts. Faelith reached into a pouch at her side and drew out a knife, beautiful and deadly, the blade etched with orc runes. I give you this knife, forged by my own hand. May it protect you, serve you, and remind you of my strength. Samuel took the knife, his hands shaking. Then he reached into his own bag and drew out the axe handle he had carved. I give you this handle, carved to match your axe. A pair like us. May it remind you that you are never alone. Faelith took the handle, and tears spilled down her green cheeks. Samuel, it is perfect, like you. Kurga raised her hands. By the customs of the Northwood clan, and in the sight of family and friends, I declare Faelith and Samuel bonded. May their days be long and their love be strong. The clearing erupted in cheers, human and orc voices blending together. Faelith threw her arms around Samuel, and he held her tightly, his heart soaring. I love you, she whispered. I love you too. The feast that followed was unlike anything Samuel had ever experienced. There was roasted meat and fresh bread, sweet cakes and strong ale, and music that made the trees shake. Humans and orcs danced together, laughing and singing, and Samuel found himself swept up in the joy of it. Late in the evening, as the fire burned low and the guests began to drift away to their tents, Samuel and Faelith sat together on the porch of their cabin, wrapped in a blanket, watching the stars. "This was a good day," Faelith said, "the best day. I never thought I would have this. A partner. A family. A home. Neither did I." She leaned her head on his shoulder. "What do we do now? We live. We build. We make a life together. That sounds perfect." They sat in comfortable silence, and Samuel felt a peace settle over him, deep and abiding. He thought about the storm that had brought Faelith to his door, about the axe she had left behind, about the 3 visits that had changed everything. "Faelith, yes, I am glad you left your axe," she laughed, a warm, rich sound. "So am I." The seasons turned, and Samuel and Faelith settled into their life together. They expanded the cabin, adding a second room and a covered porch, and they cleared a patch of ground for a garden. Faelith continued her work as a ranger, and Samuel continued his carving, and together they built something strong and enduring. The prejudice they faced did not disappear, but it faded as people saw that their relationship was real, not some passing fancy or scandal. Samuel's family became regular visitors, and Eliza doted on Faelith like a second daughter. The Northwood clan welcomed Samuel as one of their own, and he learned their customs and their language, becoming a bridge between 2 worlds. A year after the bonding, Faelith told Samuel she was pregnant. He stared at her speechless, and she smiled nervously. "Say something." "I am going to be a father." "Yes." He picked her up and spun her around, laughing, and Faelith clung to him, her own laughter ringing out. "We are going to have a baby." "We are." The pregnancy was not easy. Faelith was sick for the first few months, and Samuel hovered over her anxiously, bringing her tea and broth, and anything else she thought she might be able to keep down. As her belly grew, she became restless and irritable, and Samuel learned to give her space when she needed it and hold her when she did not. In the spring, as the snow melted and the forest came alive again, Faelith went into labor. Samuel sent Barak running for Kurga and the clan midwife, and he stayed by Faelith's side, holding her hand as she worked through the pain. It was a long labor, lasting through the night and into the next day. Samuel was exhausted and terrified, but Faelith was fierce and determined, and when the baby finally came, a lusty cry filling the cabin, Samuel felt his heart nearly burst. "A girl," the midwife said, wrapping the baby in a blanket. "Strong and healthy." Faelith reached for the baby, and Samuel watched as she cradled their daughter against her chest. The baby had green skin, lighter than Faelith's, and tiny tusks just beginning to emerge. Her eyes were gray like Samuel's, and her hair was dark. "She is perfect," Faelith whispered. "She is." "What should we name her?" Samuel thought for a moment, then smiled. "Grace. Let's call her Grace." Faelith looked at him, her eyes shining. "Grace Ashford, I love it." Grace grew quickly, a bright, curious child who was equally at home in the forest and the workshop. She learned to walk early, toddling after Faelith on her rounds, and she learned to carve almost as soon as she could hold a knife, sitting at Samuel's workbench and patiently shaping scraps of wood. 2 years later, Faelith gave birth again, this time to a boy. He had Samuel's build and Faelith's green skin, and they named him Colin. Another girl followed 2 years after that, and they named her Anna. The cabin was full of noise and laughter, and Samuel often found himself standing in the doorway, watching his family, marveling at the life they had built. Grace grew into a young woman, strong and determined like her mother, talented with wood like her father. Colin was quieter, thoughtful, with a gift for languages and a love of books. Anna was wild and fearless, always climbing trees and chasing after her siblings. The years passed. marked by the changing seasons, by births and celebrations, by hard work and quiet contentment. Samuel's hair turned gray, and Faelith's braid grew streaked with silver, but their love remained as strong as ever. On their 20th bonding anniversary, they stood together in the clearing where they had made their vows. Their children and grandchildren gathered around them. Grace had bonded with a human man from Clearwater Creek, and they had 2 children of their own. Colin had become a scholar, traveling to the southern cities to study history and law. Anna had followed in Faelith's footsteps, becoming a ranger for the Northwood clan. "You remember the storm?" Faelith asked Samuel as they stood beneath the arch of pine boughs, rebuilt for the occasion. "I remember. Do you remember the axe?" "I do," she smiled. "I almost took it back, you know. On the 3rd visit I almost changed my mind." "I am glad you did not." "So am I." Kurga, old and frail now but still sharp-eyed, stepped forward. 20 years ago my daughter stood here and pledged her life to you, Samuel Ashford, and you pledged yours to her. You have kept those promises through hardship and joy, and you have built something beautiful together. The Northwood clan honors you. Your family honors you, and I honor you. Samuel looked at Faelith, at the woman who had walked into his cabin during a storm and changed his life forever, and he felt a profound gratitude wash over him. "I love you," he said. "I love you too." They kissed, and their family cheered, and the forest echoed with the sound of celebration. That night, as they lay in bed in the cabin they had shared for 20 years, Faelith turned to Samuel. "If you could go back," she said, "to the night of the storm, would you change anything?" Samuel thought about it. About the choices he had made, the risks he had taken, the life he had built. About the woman beside him and the children they had raised and the love that had sustained them through everything. "No," he said finally, "I would not change a thing." Faelith smiled and nestled against him. "Neither would I." They fell asleep like that, wrapped in each other's arms, and outside the cabin, the forest settled into its nighttime rhythms. The wind whispered through the pines, the creek murmured over its stones, and the stars turned slowly overhead. In the workshop, 2 axes hung on the wall, side by side, their handles matching, their blades gleaming in the moonlight. A pair, like the people who wielded them. A symbol of a life built together, one careful choice at a time, until love became as solid and enduring as the mountain itself. And in the morning, when the sun rose over the peaks and the birds began their song, Samuel and Faelith would wake together as they had every morning for 20 years, ready to face another day, another season, another year, together, always together.